And I've got him in my ear going, should I hit him?
That's what you get your carer's allowance for.
So how are you not clinically depressed? And I'm like,
No!
This wouldn't happen in Finland. Fair enough, but this is British Airways. Today's guest, Helen Lear-Grant, is a disability content creator and travel blogger. It was a great conversation to have today with Helen, particularly surrounding some of the common challenges of disability and some of the common stereotypes and ridiculous things we deal with as disabled people, as well as what it's like to travel with a disability, particularly the rights and flights movement at the moment. So I really do hope you enjoy this episode, so please sit back, relax and enjoy. Welcome back to the Not Quite Pod. Today we've got Helen with us. Helen, do you just want to quickly let us know who you are, a bit about yourself, and just sort of a general intro to yourself?
Yep, so I'm Helen, and you might know me on Instagram as Wheelie Bra. So I'm a disability travel blogger. I am based in Scotland, though very evidently not Scottish. And I just travel about. And I like to explore what cool wheelchair accessible things there are to do in Scotland. I recently set up another website as well, which is going to be like hopefully going to be a big directory of loads of wheelchair accessible accommodation things to do. So it's all in one place. Just keep myself busy with that.
Love that. I love that. Like I've had so many people have that sort of idea of like creating up a directory, but then I think a lot of people go into it and go, oh shit, this is a lot of work. Where do I start?
At least I'm keeping it like just to one country. I'm like, just Scotland. Yeah. It's just small. It's great.
To be fair, that's probably one of the areas I'd love to know, because the only place in Scotland I've sort of visited was Edinburgh, and it was at the very beginning of me and Gina dating, and it wasn't like now I'm a lot more planned. I know what's going on. Obviously, I've got my front wheel attachment, which makes life a lot easier. But when we went to Edinburgh, it went a little bit pear-shaped. I ended up, because my thought process was essentially I'll rent an electric wheelchair, because I've done that for festivals here in the UK, here in England. That feels really weird to say. I've done it, like I've rented a wheelchair for the weekend that I'm going away, whether it be a festival or whatever else. I went in with the thought process of, right, I'll just do that. Got to Edinburgh. Do you think I could find anywhere that would rent me an electric wheelchair? God, no.
Oh, no.
I was like, so I was like, okay, what are my next options? So I ended up getting a mobility scooter, which is absolutely fine. I'm not too shy. I will just do it. But then what I didn't realise was that you needed a permit to get on any public transport with the mobility scooter, which then messed me up because I travelled 40 minutes to the shop where I was renting it from. So then I thought, I'll just get the tram back. It'll be absolutely fine. No, I had to travel 40 minutes in the pouring rain. I was soaked through completely. I ended up in Primark buying whole new outfits because I was fully soaked. Our hotel didn't have any drying facilities. And then I came up against the challenge of mobility scooter plus Edinburgh quaint shops, bars and restaurants. Okay, no. I think I may have made a mistake here.
And was this when you were still like in that really trying to impress Gina phase as well? Like,
no, it wasn't too bad. We got past that phase, but then also like the worst thing is there was a lot of like support that Gina needed to give me. So like Gina's pushing me up these massive hills, and I'm sat there like, don't mind me, babe. Just keep going. You'll be fine. I'll get you a glass of wine at the top. It'll be absolutely fine.
That sounds like me and Kirsty. So my wife, Kirsty, like she kind of comes with me on all my adventures, and we get ourselves into some proper sticky situations. But we always have a laugh. Like there was a time we were trying to get down to this beach, because we were in the Hebrides, like you've got to go to the beach, and there was a really steep slope going down to it, and it was all gravelly, and I had my tri-ride, but I was just like wheel spinning. She's there behind me pushing me, and I'm like leaning right forward with my handlebars like this, and you can see people looking thinking, are they all right?
Yep. We always have that. Like I always say this on the podcast. Whenever a disabled person is doing something, it always looks like something's going horribly wrong, when actually everything is fully under control. Everything is absolutely fully under control. It just looks haphazard.
That's a really good point.
It's like my favourite of that is me getting in the car. So like if I'm independently getting in my car, I kind of have to like. So people find it really weird. One of my things is I didn't want a WAV because it was just I didn't need one. I wanted the flexibility of having a normal car and everything else. One of the things that comes along with that is the way I get into the car is a little bit convoluted because essentially what I have to do if I'm going to something where I need my wheelchair, I have my walking frame next to me in the car because it's the easiest one to put on the passenger seat. Then I walk around to the boot, sit near the boot, sort of balance myself, pull the wheelchair out, unfold the wheelchair, sit in the wheelchair, put my frame away. But there is a small bit of it where I'm like wedging myself in the corner and it just about looks like I'm going to fall over and looks like I'm really going to injure myself because I'm trying to pick up this wheelchair at the same time. To this day, touch wood, never fallen over. But to everyone else, the amount of times I get people come, you sure you're okay? Yes, I'm fine. Are you sure? Yes, leave me alone.
Yeah, I'm not screaming out for help. I'm all right. It sounds like me though, because I'm an ambulatory wheelchair user. So I currently don't have a WAV. I've been waiting for one for about 2 years. That's an entire other story. But yeah, so I have my wheelchair in the boot. So I'll get like my crutches and my walking stick, kind of depending what day it is. Sometimes I'll just like walk around holding onto the car, get around to the boot and then I'll lift my wheelchair out. It's not something I can do all the time because, various reasons. But I lift my chair out and you can see people just looking over thinking, she's going to do herself an injury. And I have done a few times. I scraped my shins as I've like let the wheelchair down my legs, that kind of thing. So that's like an emergency situation only. And I could say to somebody like, excuse me, could you help? But then I'm like, I've seen the way people handle other people's wheelchairs and I'm like, no.
Yeah. I'm also too proud. The worst thing with me is I will only ask for help if I truly need it. Other than that, I will suffer. I will be absolutely fine. I will break my arm nearly doing something. But nah, it's fine. I just suffer through. It's true British things. I got a couple of friends that are from overseas, and one of my favourite things we noticed about British people is we say sorry all the time. And also, we're too proud to do, like, situations, we're too proud to say anything. So something will go horribly wrong. Like, your food's wrong or something's wrong, but it has to go horribly wrong before a British person goes, actually, I have a problem. Most of us will go, no, it's all right, I'll manage. It's fine, don't worry, it's not a problem. And actually, it's a really big problem.
Yeah, it is weird. But I think though as well, like, so there is that British thing about asking for help. But I think that's probably, in my case anyway, like a bunch of internalized ableism. I'm not going to lie. So like, because I'm the first person to say to anyone else, accept the help you need. Just ask if you need support. Do all. And I'm like coming out with all this wisdom about living your best disabled life. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I'm getting my own wheelchair out of my car, and there's like 3 people have offered help, and I'm like, no, I will do it myself. And it's so ridiculous, and I know it's ridiculous, but it's undoing all that. It's like a lot.
I think there's a couple of things though. There's the thing of like, one is the whole, like I say, we all are like, no, we don't want to cause an inconvenience to anyone else. But then there's also an element of, there is part of me that always has like, there's one bit I want help with. So it might be, say for example, it's getting my wheelchair out the car. After the wheelchair's out the car, leave me the hell alone. I don't need help with it. That's the worst thing. It then turns into this whole thing of, oh, do you want me to push you to the pub? Do you want me to take you over here? Like, no, just.
Yeah, I want help on my terms.
Yeah. Or the other thing is, I just attract weirdos. That is my other issue. Like, I will probably ask someone for help, and it just turns into this strange person that's just like, what am I? All I did was ask for someone's help, and then here I am with this person deep diving into my like relationship status, what's going on in my life. Why haven't I had an existential crisis? It just turns into this whole thing, and I'm like, all I asked was help with my wheelchair. That's all I asked to do. I didn't even ask to be interrogated.
There is as well. There is that thing of like, oh, I've helped you. Now I want you to help me in some way, or like, I want some information from you, because I often find as well, it's like, oh, I'll help you with that, and then it's like, so what happened to you? And you're like,
yep.
No, just please don't.
My personal favourite is the people just ask unsolicited questions, and I'm very much an open book. So I'm very much of the view of like I'd rather answer absolutely everything, but sometimes you just sit there and go, "What?" Like I had one guy. I was at a bar. We were on a proper tangent here. We will go on to the proper podcast in a second. We went on a real tangent, but here we
We
go.
have, yeah.
I was in a bar, and this guy comes up to me. He's like a long lost friend of like someone else I was with. Anyway, he comes up to me, older gentleman. I say older, he was just older than me. And he comes up to me and essentially goes, "So how are you not clinically depressed?" And I'm like, And this whole thing started with me going, "Do you want me? Do you want? I'm getting another drink. Do you want another drink?" That's how the whole conversation started. I was just trying to be polite. I was like, and then it was literally like, so yeah. Well, how are you not? And I'm sitting there drinking my beer, going, I think I'm going to need a couple more of these.
Yes. I think I am clinically depressed now, thanks.
Yeah. And the worst thing was, he kept coming, like, so Gina was with me, I explained what happened, she's like, what the hell? And anyway, so this guy then comes back and asks further questions around that topic. And I'm like, dude, like, what do you want me to say? I'm sorry that I'm quite chipper. Like,
I'm sorry I don't fit your narrative of what a disabled person
Yeah.
should be like.
I just love that, like, why aren't you really sad?
It's just,
And I'm like,
yeah.
I mean, I really wanted to turn around and be like, mate, you just caught me on a really good day. I'm just really buzzed. Like,
You should have.
just literally, this is what I mean when I say attract widows. So there's that story, and I'll do one more just to show full context. So, like, they're not single scenarios. The other one, I was away in Copenhagen for my friend's wedding.
Yeah.
Now, so lovely group of friends. Like two of the guys were brilliant photographers. So they were all taking photos of everyone. They've gone up to me and Gina like, "Oh, guys, do you want some pictures?" Like, yeah, we'll get some pictures. So me and Gina, I'm all suited and booted. Gina's in a lovely dress, and anyway, so she's taking pictures. They're very good pictures. And then this German guy comes over, like not part of our group, but part of the group that we were with were also German. Yeah, a German guy comes over and he's like, "Oh, like a fabulous couple, da da da." And the worst thing is, me and Ginny get this all the time. Both being ginger and being a couple is the strangest thing on the planet. So we're like, fine. This guy's just like, "Yeah, great couple." And then he goes to me like, "Oh, can I get a picture of you two kissing?" And I'm like, classic example of British people not wanting to say no to someone. So me and Ginny are like, "Do you know what? Yeah, okay, fine." So we did that. He's taking a picture. It's a very good picture, to be fair. Very good picture, which he then sent airdrop to one of our friends. Absolutely fine. So then we're like, okay, that was a bit of a strange experience. Carried on. And then anyway, he's like, "Oh, congratulations." And we're both like, not our wedding day, but also we're too British to be like, I don't want to burst your bubble. I really don't. I just don't want to do it. And then so we're like, "Oh yeah, thank you." And then we carry on and walk over to the bride and groom, and he starts like swearing and all sorts in German and like cursing us, and he basically doesn't realise that half of our crew are German, so they're all cracking up laughing, and and then it gets worse. So then this guy disappears for about an hour, and then me and Gina are walking back to the cars to travel back to the venue where the party's happening. And this German guy, and they get more pictures on like a field. And this German guy comes up to me again, and goes, "Oh, can I get a picture of your girlfriend?" And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever, sure." And then he's like, "Can I get a picture with your girlfriend so I can send it to my wife and tell her that this is my new wife?" And I'm like, "All right, okay." So then, before I've had a chance, Gina's like, "Oh, let's just do it. Get out of the way. Let's just do it." I'm like, "Okay, fine." Anyway, so I've got my friends, the groom's like best friend. He's great. He's so much fun. I've got him in my ear going, "Should I hit him?" Like, he's German. Bear in mind, he's German, and he's just going to me in my ear, going, "It like thought like the worst thing is with Kim. He's got he watched a lot of English and American telly, so like his accent is brilliant, and he's just like, do I need to do something? Should I get involved? Should I hit him? What do, like should am I okay to leave you? I feel worried, and I'm like, no, it's fine. Unfortunately, this happens to me and Gina quite not this specific circumstance, but this strange entity of happening that happens quite a lot. So don't worry, we can cope with it. It's fine. But yeah, it's a prime example of why I don't ask strangers for help, because I just attract strange people like this.
Do you know?
There you go.
You get some funny anecdotes out of it, though, so it might almost be worth it. Do you know, if you feel like you've been repeating the same old anecdotes, you I could do with a new one. I'll just ask someone for help.
Yep. It's just, honestly, you just sit there thinking, the amount of situations I look at, like 10 minutes after it happens, and I'm like, oh my God, what just happened?
It just takes a while for it all to hit.
But yeah, so that's why I don't ask strangers for help. Anyway, tell us a bit more about you. How does your disability affect you? You've obviously mentioned that you're an ambulatory wheelchair user. So what are some of the things that you find difficult? How have you sort of worked around it? And sort of just a general intro to your disability or condition. I never know what word to use there. So
yeah. For me, it's both, really, because I have a rare neurological condition called neuromyelitis optica. So I was diagnosed with that back in 2014. I went the whole hog, and I was paralyzed from the chest down, lost pretty much all my vision in both my eyes. So that was really eventful. I'd only been with my now wife for 8 months, so it was an eye-opener.
Oh, wow, you did baptism. That was a baptism of fire. Wow, okay.
It really was. It was like, just so I'll just get you in, and then it's like, by the way, welcome to my life.
Yeah, full sense of security. Oh.
I know. Like, we knew I had health problems, right? Because I'd had various stuff going on for ages, but we had no idea that was coming. I thought I had like MS or something, and I mean, which is bad enough in itself. But then diagnosed with that, and with neuromyelitis optica, and I learned to walk again over a few months in hospital, and then our life just had to change considerably because we were living up in a flat up 3 flights of stairs without a lift. So that was it's a big changes. Since then, I made massive improvements early on, and I was walking like completely unaided. I just couldn't walk as far for as long, that kind of stuff. Lots of fatigue and pain and all that kind of stuff. But it's a relapsing condition, so for most people, your relapses aren't as bad as your first attack is. So I've had a few things where a leg's gone numb, or like both legs have gone a bit numb or something, something goes a bit weak, or I lose a tiny bit of vision or whatever. And then every time you're left with a little bit more disability, and it's all quite unpredictable. Don't know when this is going to happen, but you just learn to wing it and get on with it. So it was actually just over a year ago that I got my wheelchair. So up until then, I'd been using a mobility scooter. But I just found them a bit of a pain in the ass, to be honest.
As we said earlier,
Yeah, well, one, getting into the car, my goodness, I couldn't get it into the car myself, and just kind of going in small shops, all that kind of stuff, a bit of a nightmare. And then when I got a wheelchair, I was like, God, I feel so much more engaged with the world, because it's like you don't have that thing in front of you. Yeah, and it's kind of similar when I put like my front wheel attachment on. That's great for being out and about, but I don't like going kind of to the shop in it, or that kind of stuff, because it's I just feel like it's something.
That's my favourite thing about the attachments, though, is the ability to just unclip it and leave it there. That is my favourite thing.
Exactly. Just clip it off, done. Yeah. And it's so versatile. So I found like having the wheelchair, I just felt more engaged with the world, and like I could do so much more. I think once I accepted the wheelchair more than the mobility scooter in a way. And I think it's, because I did feel engaged and because I felt like I didn't take up as much room, you know, there's this big thing about like disabled people not wanting to take up room, women not wanting to take up room, you know, all that kind of jazz. And so the wheelchair kind of gave me just a big boost of confidence, really, which and people are baffled at when you say to them, like, my wheelchair is the best thing that's happened to me.
I understand this like completely. I mean, my situation is very different. I grew up disabled, so like I don't know any difference. Everyone goes to me, "What's it like being disabled?" And I'm like, "What's it like to walk?" I have no idea. But then for me, like I've seen, like my more elderly family members, like they're now needing wheelchairs and stuff like that. But the biggest thing I struggle with is they're reluctant to use it because they don't want to. They see it as an area of giving up. But the problem is with that narrative is what I can't wrap my head around, particularly from my perspective of those being family members, is like you've had someone that you've known for 24 years use mobility aids for his entire life, and the amount of dumb stuff you see him doing every day, and you're like, nah, I just can't. I can't, and I get it. It's because they know something different. But then I also just want to smack them over the head and go, you're going to have so much more fun if you just submit and go into the chair or use the crutches or do whatever.
Exactly. And I think when you've kind of had that experience, it's like other people's reluctance can be really frustrating because, like, you know, obviously, like I said, I was kind of reluctant at first. But now I see other people's reluctance and I'm like, come on, just learn from my mistakes. Come on. And I know it doesn't happen like that. Like my mum has problems with her hips, right? And she's going away she's away in Prague and she's like, I'm going to walk up to the castle. But, you know, she was saying her partner's worried about her in case like she's sore the next day. And I'm like, you will be sore the next day if you walk up to the castle, 100%. Get the train. And she's like, but I don't want to give in. And I'm like, have a shit holiday then. Like, you know, you've got...
It's this whole thing of like, so one of the big discussions me and Gina had was when I was younger, there was a big push for me to use my walking frame all the time because it helps with my strength and everything else. Completely, that logic still works. It does have an impact on the strength of my body and everything else. But the reason I now use my chair more is because it actually gives me surprise to most people because they see walking as the ultimate thing. Is that actually my wheelchair makes my life so much easier because I still have the availability of my hands. I can sit in a group and still be included. I'm not slowly sinking because I'm getting more and more tired, which is a common thing with my condition. And it's just I'm a lot more involved, a lot more versatile. Obviously, with the front wheel attachment, that also helps. But then it also means that I'm a little bit more nimble as well. I'm a little bit more nimble, a little bit more versatile. It's just a hard thing to put into words. But once I sort of got to the grips with like, oh, now I identify as a wheelchair user in terms of like 95% of the time I'm in a wheelchair. I just, it's so much easier. But then also people go, oh, but that, like, you're becoming lazy and everything else. I'm like, no, I've just become more active in other areas of my life so that I sort of counterbalance it.
Yeah, I am so much more active because, like, do you know, I think, to be honest, it took even like my neurologist when I was saying I'm getting a wheelchair, like, it took her quite a long time to get her head around it. I'm still not sure she has because she was like, you know, but you can walk. And I said, yeah, but when I walk with my crutches, I can't walk very far. I said to her, I can't even walk to the pub, like to the local pub. And she went, oh, right, okay, maybe you do need a wheelchair. And it was the pub that made her think about it. But like when I was like, that's the important thing, the pub. But like when I'm walking with my crutches, it's like I have to look at my feet when I'm walking because I've not got a really brilliant perception of where my feet are. So I have to look at my feet and I'm always looking like slightly ahead just to make sure there's nothing I'm going to trip over. Whereas when I'm in my wheelchair, I'm just like, I can look up and around and I can have conversations while I'm... Yeah, exactly, yeah. Like with my crutches, I'd struggle to hold a conversation while I'm walking down the street. And then I'm exhausted for the rest of the day. I could do like one thing in a day if I was lucky. Whereas now I can do a lot more. Like the fatigue is still there. The fatigue's not going to go away. And there are days where I am completely wiped out. But on the days that I am a little bit better, I can do so much more.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the examples that I actually mentioned on a podcast recently was like, because of using the front wheel attachments and those additional things that are electrified. Oftentimes, when we have able-bodied folk with us, we forget the distances we're covering. So we sit there
Yeah.
like, oh shit, yeah, we've been walking for like 2.5 hours. You're right. Are you okay? You doing all right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I'll always say to my wife, you set the pace. Like, you set the pace, because
Yep.
otherwise I'll be like, and like
Yep.
I've figured out like what speed she walks at. Like on, like, oh,
Yep.
it's in the morning,
Yeah.
she'll be
Yeah.
walking a
Yeah.
little bit faster.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's brilliant. But yeah, it does.
It
It just means you can do so much more. Yeah.
It does. It just makes you. Well, like I say, it's more that you're more involved and you're more present. Because I relate to that looking down at your feet thing all the time. Because when I'm walking on my walking frame, I constantly have to watch out for bubbles and stuff. Because if I hit one of them at speed, I'm just gonna keep going, and like that's not
Yeah.
good. So I can relate to it so much because you're constantly worrying. Oh, am I going to be able to cover the distance I want to cover? Am I going to hit any bumps? What's the terrain like? What's the weather going to be like? And the other thing that goes through a lot of people's heads, oh, I'm slowing the people down that I'm with.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing. Like in a wheelchair, you kind of have the options of you can push, and do things that way. Someone can push you, or you can use an attachment if you've got one. But that also means then you've got more flexibility of what your options are, because it might be a case of actually the distance you're covering, it's not worth having your attachment with you, it's worth just going to someone. That's a big hill, can you give me a boost up the hill?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. But it's, getting the wheelchair, that's the only reason I started the travel blog, was because I could finally go out and do more and experience more. And it was that kind of made me more adventurous and made me kind of look at, what can we do now? What can we do now? And because I used to travel a lot. Like so I lived in Australia and New Zealand for a few years and had a camper van.
Whoa, okay.
This is all like pre-disability, right? So I mean, I was getting unwell at the time. No idea I didn't know what it was, So I was getting unwell at the time. So that's what put an end to it was my health. But like, I wrote a travel blog, and I was just van life, chasing sunsets and all that kind of stuff. And it was all very like stereotypical, cheesy Australia kind of backpacker type thing.
Yeah.
But it was amazing,
Yeah.
and like coming back to the UK, getting ill, finding like my life was just like everything was really slow. I walked slow. I couldn't do much. I was tired all the time, in pain all the time. I completely lost that like adventurous spirit. And I think getting the wheelchair, doing the travel blog, I'm back there again, guaranteed a bit older. Things are a bit different, but
Yeah. But I'm completely the same. Like so the two biggest things that have helped me is, I know I banged on about it a lot this episode, is my attachments help me massively traveling wise, because it just means I can get around so much easier. And I've got the added bonus of mine doesn't have any sort of restrictions on the battery, so that helps when I'm flying to places and stuff like that. But then the other benefit was, and this is one thing I really want to sort of say to the younger community listening, to more say, don't wait until you get a partner, do this. Find a friend that you can have this relationship with, where I say that meeting Gina opened up so many doors, because Gina's been exposed to all of my care areas. Like there's no like, oh, I need to hide this element. Like there was that in the initial bit. Now she just, unfortunately, you've seen it all. So like, we're just going to crack on. But then having that, when it comes to traveling, getting to a point, like I've got friends that are in that situation, but they're in that situation with friends of theirs, so that it's not their partner, so it gives them a little bit more flexibility. So my one piece of advice that I'd give is get to a point where you're just honest with your friends, because let's be honest, most of us aren't, because some of the care needs that we need and the support we need, it's embarrassing. We don't want to be a burden to someone else. It's again linking into that very British culture of going, you don't want to trouble someone. But the more like you can sort of go, actually, if you can give me a hand with this, you're going to have a lot more fun, because there's less of, oh no, we're not going to be able to do that because I can't do that on my own, and I don't want to expose that I can't do that.
No, exactly. I get what you mean. And I think like, it is get comfortable with your friends. And yeah, I guess for people who are able-bodied, offer that kind of relationship to your friends. I know, for example, so because I'm ambulatory, I know that I can offer support to my other disabled friends who are perhaps full-time. Just yesterday, I was out with Izzy Does Wheelies. I don't know if you follow her. So I was out with her yesterday, and it meant that I could get her wheelchair into the back of my car. She didn't have to twist and hurt her back, all that kind of stuff. And I could do that. And I think if we all see what we can do to help other people, regardless of our, ability or disability, then it's a lot better with your friendships, I think.
I think one of my favourite things I had the other day, so one of the guys that's actually been on the podcast, Andre, he's a really good friend of mine now, was here. So he was here so he travelled over from Germany to stay with us for the night, and then I was dropping to the airport. So one of my favourite moments is so my family've got a hot tub. So it's great, but then also from a disabled perspective, bear in mind, me and Andre have, he's a little bit more able than me, but not as much, but not massively. One of my favourite memories was you had both partners trying to figure out how the hell they were going to get both of us into the hot tub. And it was one of the funniest things because I said to Andre, I bet you £100 that 13-year-old you was like, that's never going to happen. Never going to happen that someone is going to be like, yeah, I'll just chuck him into this hot tub. So we've got both our girlfriends, well, actually his wife, picking him up and trying to figure out how to put him in. But then it's again coming to that comfortable thing. And I've had situations like that with my friends where they're like, "Yeah, we'll just figure it out." But the worst thing is, Gina thinks very logically. My friends, however, sometimes don't. So sometimes, yeah, we can do that, and I'm like, I will die. I will literally, I will cease to exist if you do that.
Yeah, it's I'm willing to take risks, but that's a step too far.
Yes. So, but yeah, it does come back to that. Like I say, just be very open with your support. The thing is, people's support's different, but then also, as you say, advice for the able-bodied community or anyone that's more able than the person needing support is just open the door, because a lot of the time it's our own self-talk that's doing that to us, of going, I can't ask him or her for that support because I'm going to be seen as a weirdo. When actually, I know we got onto this from a travel perspective, because particularly when it comes to traveling, you're going to be able to do so much more. Because now I approach situations like I do. I never used to, but now I'm like, oh, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Me and Gina are talking about going to Thailand at some point in the next year or so. And then we both sat there boy, that's a whole different ball game. We've done Europe, and that's a different kettle of fish. They're normally pretty set up. Thailand, this could be a different game. Yeah. But I'm going into it and going, do you know what? We'll figure it out.
Wing it. That's what we always say. We'll just wing it. We'll figure it out. And that takes a lot of confidence, I think. And I think it takes a lot of pushing it and realizing that nothing really bad's happened, as long as you're safe, etc., etc. I'm not going to tell anyone to risk injuring themselves. I can choose to risk injuring myself. I wouldn't encourage anybody else to do that, But yeah, you can push it, and you can go oh, do you know what? If we get stuck, we'll just figure it out, But it does take.
And confidence. I think as well, one of the hardest things from my perspective of being a full-time wheelchair user, although I can wait there, is one of the hardest things for people to accept is they have this thing of, obviously it's very different, it has to be on your terms. But if worst comes to worst, someone can pick you. I'm not actually that tall. I'm only 5'3", so I'm relatively small. Someone can just pick you up. As long as they do it in a manner that's not you've involuntarily just picked me up like I'm a rag doll. It's a very different. I remember I was away. I've said on the podcast before, very fortunate as a kid. Did some traveling when I was younger, and especially one of them that comes to mind. We went to India on a holiday.
Amazing.
And I remember we got to this beach, and we were like, "That's a long way to the sea and a long way to the sunbeds." And I'm sat there in my wheelchair. Bear in mind, I'm 9, and I'm like, don't know what we're going to do here. Next thing you know, these 4 Indian blokes just picked up my wheelchair and ran me down the beach. It was the best thing I've ever seen.
I bet as a 9-year-old you were just like, yes!
I was more like, Dad was just kind of looking and going, I guess I'm just going to have to lug him. It'll be fine. Next thing you know, just the worst thing it was the sheer speed. Like, we all knew what was going on, but it was the sheer speed that the Indians just went, do you know what? Fuck it, let's just go.
Terrifying and brilliant.
But then the best thing was, like, prime example, the best thing was they came up to him and was like, when you need a hand, just come grab us and we'll take you back. I was like, great.
Nice.
But so, like, that just shows, I mean, that's a very extreme example, but it just shows you, like, I know we joked at the beginning, like, I attract weirdos and, like, sometimes it's really awkward to ask for help, but in those situations, I think that's when you're just like, do you know what? Fuck it. Like, the amount of times as disabled people we've done undignifying things that we just actually sit back and think of later. We laugh at them, but we do sit there and go, oh, that's not something normal people do.
No, it isn't normal people. No, I think it's, we get ourselves into some situations through necessity, don't we? But as long as you can end up having a laugh about it, that's the main thing.
I mean, to be more basic, one of my favourite memories of me and my friends is there was a full 20-minute debate. We were going out to a bar and there was a full 20-minute debate between my friends of who was going to put my shoes on. I was like, it's really not that important. It's really not. Like, I just need my shoes. It wasn't even like a debate where like they didn't want to do it. It was just a case of who's going to do it. They all were happy to do it, but it was just like, okay.
How does that take 20 minutes to decide?
It's when you have male friends and alcohol is involved. It all gets a bit interesting. But yeah, we've gone on some very strange tangents. But coming back to the travel thing, what made you start the blog? Like what made you dive into the blog? I know you said obviously you've always had a love of travel, but where did the idea start really?
Well, this time round it was my wife's birthday, and we were like, let's go to the Hebrides, at the Outer Hebrides, and we just wanted to make that happen. So, as you do, you go away to Google, like, wheelchair accessible, places to stay, things to do, places to eat, and you just come up blank. You make phone calls, get vague answers, and it got to a point where I was so frustrated with it, and we just said, let's just wing it. We'll be all right. We found somewhere to stay that was like accessible enough,
doable,
because we were on a budget as well. If we had a bigger budget, we could have got somewhere like super duper accessible. It'd have been fine, but we were on a budget, so it was somewhere that I could manage. And we were only supposed to be there for I don't know, maybe like 5 days or something. But our ferries kept getting cancelled, so we ended up being away for like, oh God, I don't know. Was it like 10 days in the end? So we just did a full tour of like the Outer Hebrides right from the bottom to the top. We just thought, while we're here, let's do it. But before we went, we just said, you know what? Let's just see what we find that's accessible to do. Let's see if we can find. My thing is, I wanted to get on a beach. Everyone goes to the Outer Hebrides for the beaches, right? So I was like, I want to see if I can get on a beach. And I did with my tri-ride, there was some really packed sand.
Oh, nice.
And the water was really far in. So I was like, yes. But we said, let's film it. Let's do like a vlog or something. And we said, if it's really shit, we don't have to do anything with it. We can just laugh at ourselves and then just leave it. That's all we have to do.
Yeah.
And it is fairly shit, but it's not actually. It's all right. So we filmed it and we just kind of like, can we get here? Can we get there? And we filmed it, and we had such a laugh doing it. And we did manage to do some amazing things. Like we got up to the Callanish stones in Lewis, the standing stones.
Nice.
We didn't know if we could get up there, but we managed to do that, which was like amazing. Came home and put the vlog up on YouTube and thought, done that. Let's just leave it. And then I've got a couple of messages from people saying, oh, that's amazing, thanks. Like, I've always wanted to go to the Hebrides. And then some guy saying, oh, I booked my honeymoon in the Hebrides and this is going to be like really helpful. Thank you so much. And I thought,
Oh,
maybe I
wow.
should just do more, maybe we should just do more.
Yeah.
And so we did. And it's not the easiest thing. Like when so Kirsty works part-time because she's my carer or PA or whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
And I'm now self-employed, but only just, and it's not like I'm really making any money out of it at this point.
Yeah.
But so money is kind of difficult, and trying to have this kind of super duper adventurous travel blog that involves going places that probably are more expensive because you pay through the nose for accessibility. It was a bit difficult. So a lot of what we've done is just like, oh, look, here's a nice walk, or that kind of thing. But it started to pick up, and we're starting to do like more accommodation stuff, things like that, and more days out.
That's amazing. I think that's one of the hardest things, because I had the very similar thing, wanted to do the whole like create TripAdvisor for disabled people. I think a lot of people go into that, but then as we said at the beginning, there is so much work that goes into that. And then as well, like, I will openly say I've not got the patience for it. So like I get annoyed, like not annoyed's the wrong word, but like the fact that I always have to phone hotels, like, just put it on your website. Like, it's not hard. Just please, just put it on your website. Like, or do you know what makes me laugh? So one of my obsessions I've realised that, and I think this goes for a lot of disabled people, when it comes to hotels, we're obsessed with bathrooms. Obsessed. But majority of people I've spoke to, they're like, "Oh, I love a good bathroom," but it's like, what is wrong with us? Like,
well, it really is the difference between am I going to be able to shower or not?
Yes. Yep. But the worst thing is how many hotels that have these really arty shots, like that it's just the shower head spraying out water, and I'm like, doesn't tell me anything. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, it's got a shower head. Wow. Like,
and then it'll just say fully wheelchair accessible, and you're like, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Or like, for me, one of my favourites is like fully accessible and all this. But then one of my things is I can't use baths. But then why is it that not so much now, when I was younger, every accessible room, it just has a bath with a grab rail, and I'm like, not quite. Almost, but not quite.
Yeah, it's like I can get a bath if Kirsty's there to make sure I don't knock myself out 4 times and drown, but there was wet room all the way. With the Accessible Holidays Scotland thing, that's with the actual directory. That's why we've got it all ticked. It's like, wet room, shower, which side transfers your toilet, what grab rails have you got, all this kind of stuff. Because you can't just say fully accessible, because like accessibility is different to every single person. I know some people who hate wet room showers and only want to get a bath.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. But then for me, it's just like, put the pictures on your website. Like, it's really not that hard.
Exactly. Like these accessibility guides that people do are brilliant. The ones where the accessibility guides where it's all photos and descriptions of everything, like down to minute detail. I love them because I'm like, now I can make a decision myself.
Or one of my favourites is I get so excited when I'm on booking.com and there's actually an accessible room listed, and I'm like, oh, they've actually thought about it. Yay! Instead of me having, prime example. So me and Gina, we're due to go to Germany on a weekend away.
Amazing.
Really looking forward to it. It's great fun. But it was proper lastminute.com trying to be more like, go for it, we'll figure it out. Anyway, so we emailed this couple of German hotels. Most of them are like, oh, it's bank holiday weekend, like we're fully booked or whatever. Fine. This one German hotel comes back and goes, we do not have any accessible rooms. We suggest you look for somewhere with accessible rooms. And we're like, classic German directness.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much concrete advice, but I'm pretty sure I could have figured that out on my own. All you needed to tell me was you didn't have an accessible room.
I know, that is funny. But it's the thing is, well, I do prefer, like, if someone's straight up, if someone just says, no, sorry, we're not accessible.
Yeah,
Because
we're not.
otherwise you get well, we're not really accessible, but if you don't mind being lifted down the steps, and then if you can do this, and like we don't have an accessible toilet, but if blah blah blah, and it's like, well, can you just say that you're not accessible, like, please?
Yeah. Stop wasting my time. Like, I know, actually, I realise as well, I'm saying a lot of the places I've travelled to, but it's just because most of the time, these are when the funny stories happen. So talking about, like, just people not thinking about how things work. I went, so it was my sister's 30th birthday, my dad, mum and dad's 60th, so we went away on a big holiday to Turkey. This was in October time. And anyway, so we get to the hotel. I'd emailed to say, can we please request the accessible room because it was booked as a package holiday. So I said, please can I get the accessible room? And the hotel came back, said, yes, no problem. We'll make a note on the booking, make sure you have the accessible room. Got there and my mum gets the front desk, and this is the worst thing. I'm the control freak. So normally when me and Gina go away, I sort everything out. So I'm in full control as the disabled person. This time my mum has taken the mantle because that's her usual role. This is what she's doing. Anyway, so we get there, and then the lady at the desk goes, it's like, oh, we've requested the accessible room, and automatically her face drops, and she's like, oh dear. And then she goes, oh, well, we've already got guests staying there for the next 2 days, so it won't be available till for another 2 days. And I'm like, right. And then I'm sat there, so I've got the email here and then I've looked at the lady's badge that sat behind the one that's talking to me, and the names match, and I'm like, I've got it here that says you've confirmed the booking. And the look on the face was mortified, but then obviously there's not much you can do. It is what it is. But at the time I was fuming. Anyway, so I've gone off. Anyway, calm myself down because I get really agitated because my mum's like, oh, we can sort it out. But I'm like, it's not that, it's the principle. It was booked. I'd done everything I needed to do. Why the hell am I having to have this discussion? But anyway, cut a long story short, got into the non-accessible room. And to be fair, as non-accessible rooms go, it was fairly doable. The shower had a very limited threshold, so once I stuck one of the patio chairs in the shower, we managed to solve the problem. Anyway, so 2 days later, we get into this. 2 days later, we get into this accessible room, and so I've got into the accessible room, and I'm looking at the shower seat, going, "Why is it that when you sit on the shower seat, you've got your back to the shower controls? Who designed that? Like, how does that work? Like, how do you, and the worst thing is they weren't like easy to reach. Like, they were full on, like, you had to turn them and everything. And I'm like, okay, that didn't work. So I'm like, okay, how's this worked? And then, so that's another one conundrum. And then I'm in the shower and I've literally pushed myself back on the grab rails that are either side of this chair. And I've just heard crunch, snap, pop. And I'm like, oh dear. And then literally the grab rails come off in my hand. And I'm going, Gina, you might want to come in a second and just figure out what we're going to do about this.
Oh, brilliant. Absolutely trashing the place.
And then to top it off, so the hotel, although accessible, one of the accessible ways was like to use like these like nice but like stair lifts. So like the proper stair lifts that you get a wheelchair and it goes along the stairs. And they were nice wide stairs, so you weren't interrupting anyone, but the entire trip we were there, they didn't work. So I had to do lots of steps, which I could luckily do. But anyways, but bless them, the poor maintenance team were trying it the whole time we were there and got it working the last 2 days. But the funniest thing about it was, so it was an all-inclusive holiday, and we get one like day in their posh restaurant. So as an apology for like the whole room fiasco and everything, they're like, oh, you can also have dinner at another one of our nice restaurants, so free of charge and everything else. Get to the restaurant and they put our table of like 10, or yeah, it was 10. I think it was 10. Anyway, and then they put it up 2 steps, and I'm like, oh my god, like, you just sit there thinking, I don't understand how this has got lost in translation because it's very clear that I'm sat here in a wheelchair. Like, God,
like, where is the
yes.
communication?
Yeah, it's not even that. Like, it's more just like, do you realize how much of a mug you look because you're trying to say sorry to the
Yeah.
guy in the wheelchair, but to say sorry to him, you put him on a table upstairs. Hmm.
Oh,
Just
dear.
but yeah. So those are those are pretty much my travel stories for now. But yeah, I've taken over the podcast. I just realised how many stories I've told. Sorry, my
No, I
bad.
love it. It's brilliant. I love hearing about. I say I love it. I don't love that you've had disasters, but I think there's a certain like humour that you grow over time with this kind of stuff. Like, you get a
Yeah,
thick skin with it, don't you?
it's
And it's
more
quite
like a
funny.
reassurance of thank God I'm not the only one.
Yes.
Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like with travel as well. There's so many fun, like you said. There's so many funny stories that come out of it. Like I had one in Germany where like it was one of these automatic doors where you press the button, the toilet, public toilet, you press the button and the door shuts. But there's a 5 second break countdown. Like there's a 5 second break between you press the button and the door shuts. And every time I went to this public toilet, this German guy would count it down for me. And he'd be like, "I'm 5, 4, 3," and I'm like, I know, don't worry, it's fine."
Oh dear.
Just travel and disability are two different fish. And on that note, what is your? You've seen there's been a lot of movement around disability traveling, particularly when it comes to airlines. What's your view on the whole? Excuse me, right to flight thing, and all of that's happening at the moment because there's a lot of information going around.
Yes, yeah. I think it's a hugely important campaign. Like, I can't believe it's still 2000 and what year are we in? 2023, and I nearly forgot. Can't believe we're in 2023, and and we're at a point where there's such inequality for disabled people who want to get on a
Yeah.
plane. Do you know? And I always think to myself, for me, it's not that bad. I can walk a little distance, blah 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 blah. But you look around at what's happening to people's wheelchairs, the lack of dignity, and everyone's going, "Oh, look at these fab new seats that where one tucks away and you can wheel into position." And it's like, yes,
Yeah.
but what if you want to go to the toilet? There needs to be like a
Yeah.
huge overhaul with it. So like, yeah, it definitely needs to change. But then I'm also like, and there needs to be big awareness about it as well. But also, I know from like my personal experience of seeing this kind of stuff and hearing and seeing all of these like really horrific situations, it puts me off air travel, I'm not gonna lie. So I do like it when you get this like odd positive story that comes through, and people will pile on and go, but it's not positive for everyone, and I'm like, I know, but I need a glimmer of hope.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you said it because, like, one of my things is touch wood. I've never really had any major issue. It's like I've had your odd delay, odd stupid question, odd random situation that you find yourself in, surrounded by weirdos, as we've already discovered. But like, so a lot of the time when I travel, it's just inconveniences. Like, there's always confusion about traveling with my attachment because of the battery and everything else. Even though I've phoned up and blah blah blah. Like, but it's just inconvenient. Whereas I've never really had an issue of, oh shit, someone's broke my wheelchair. Because I think for me, when I travel with my attachment, I put it down in its own, like I pack it down, it's in its own bag, it goes into the hold, no one touches it. Literally, they pick up the bag and move the bag. No one touches any of the actual mechanism. But then also, I've been very lucky that, yes, there's been new bumps and scrapes, but there's never been any like major damage to my wheelchair. I've never got there and it's like mangled into 1,500 pieces. Like it's normally like, that had a bit more paint on it last time I saw it, but hey ho, like,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
normally the strength of it. Whereas obviously, I think one of the biggest things is electric chairs because no one knows how to handle it. That's when you really see people damage stuff because they're like trying to pull it from the control unit and everything else. Whereas a manual chair kind of, unless it's got an attachment attached to it, it's kind of much of a muchness. Once you've dealt with one, you've kind of dealt with all of them. Plus, as well, with a lot more chairs like mine, which is rigid and fairly small. Worst comes to worst, just leave it whole, leave it as it is. It's not gonna it's gonna fit. Like
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
massive plane. Um,
Yeah.
so I think I've been very lucky. I've not really faced any like, oh my god, you've just ruined my holiday. Like, yeah, the inconveniences of like someone forgetting to bring my wheelchair up, or like taking a decade to bring it up, or stuff like that. I've been very lucky to. Plus, as well, I do have my own internal rules of like I would never fly on my own. Would never fly on my own. Would always fly with a friend or Gina or someone, because it just means that there isn't that awkwardness of like, who's going to help me get to the toilet? Who's going to help me do this? Like, I said to Chief the other day, could you imagine me travelling on my own and then like, they forget my wheelchair and I'm just sat there 2 hours like, can I have my wheelchair now? I really need I needed to go for a wee, and I've literally been sat here for like 4 hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've been very lucky when it comes to my wheelchair and travel, and like I'm quite open to, as you already heard me say, I'm quite open to air travel. I have had quite a positive experience overall. There are certain like, I mean, a lot of the cyber community feel the same. BA is one of the airlines that I'd avoid, just because whenever
Right.
I've flown with them, it's just been a headache. But other than that, like most other airlines, I've flown with EasyJet, I've flown with mostly budget airlines, and they're all pretty good. One of my favourites so far is Norwegian. If you ever get a chance to fly Norwegian, they are like Scandinavian efficiency. Like, nope, we're gonna do it. Like, one of my favourite things is I
Excellent.
recently came back from my sister's wedding, and we landed, and it was a British Airways plane, but run by Finnair staff. We've landed, and they've taken forever to bring a wheelchair up, and this Finnish woman's just stood there like, this wouldn't happen in Finland. I'm like, fair enough, but this is British Airways.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because like some people have had like really horrific experiences, and I do think, and I know you say as well, like, oh, it's minor inconveniences and stuff, but it's like they build up, and especially if you're flying all the
Yeah,
time and you have and you do want to fly on your own or need to fly on your own, and you have, all of those things. It's all stuff that shouldn't happen.
yeah,
But yeah, it is nice occasionally at the minute to hear the odd positive story, because there's a lot of like I worry about kind of newly disabled people reading that
yeah,
particularly,
yeah.
and feeling
Completely agree.
put off. Yeah.
Completely agree, and this is one of the reasons I do try and approach disability. Of like, yeah, there are stuff that happens that's a pain in the ass and is inconvenient, and yes, like in the grand scheme of things, ideally they wouldn't happen. But then I would love to get people, like, one of my big things that I've realized recently is I always say to people, control what you can control. So, like, for example, with the whole packing down the gizmo thing, I've made that as easy and as foolproof as I can possibly get it. If something goes wrong, it goes wrong. Like, I've done everything in my power to make sure that that does not happen. But it's
Mhm.
like certain things have happened where people are doing the same thing and expecting a different result. It's Einstein's law of insanity is, don't do the same thing and expect a different result, because it will still happen. Like, and that's my big thing at the moment. And would say to any new person traveling with a disability, yes, there are certain things out of your control. Yes, they shouldn't happen. Yes, in the grand scheme of things, none of this you should have to do, but absolutely control what you can, because it will make your life so much easier. And also, I'd say also go into it. And this is a bit of a double-edged sword. I would say go into it expecting the worst, because that
Yes.
way, like, everything's a win. So, like, for example, I do fully expect me to sit there for 45 minutes away from my wheelchair, but I just look at it and go, look, I am sat here, I've got my headphones on, I'm scrolling on TikTok or whatever. No one's gonna die. Like, it is what it is. It's frustrating. I kind of want to get on the go, but like, I'm not in providing I don't need the toilet. That's the only time I'm like, oh my god, let me go. Other than that, I'm like, look, it happens. Like, it's that my same perspective. If I ever get stuck in traffic, I'm like, do I need the toilet? No. Have I got good music going? Yes. Am I able to let the person know that I'm going to be late? Yes. All right, happy days. I've done everything I can. Again, it
Yeah.
comes back to control what you can. If you've done that, there's nothing else you can do. Just got to crack
It's
on.
a really good way of looking at it. It's a really good way, yeah, of just, it's that, yeah, control what you can, don't stress the other stuff, because,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Is but then but that's not to say like every time I travel I'm like, oh, this is fine, like that. Don't get me wrong, like when someone's taking forever checking because it's a bloody battery and I've told you 15 times it's a battery, it is frustrating. But then you do just have to go, look, it is what it is. I've done what I can to solve it. And then worst comes to worst, particularly when it comes to flying, I always think and go, well, they can't leave without me because it's their fault I'm running late. So
Mhm.
I was here on time. So rant over. Yeah, air travel. I think, as I say, for me personally, as you say, my worry is by a lot of the negative press that air travel is getting. It puts people off traveling via air. When also the added element of it is, one, obviously there's more places you can explore, but then a lot of it is as well the time. A lot of time, if you get involved with trains and buses and everything else and driving, it's just so much longer.
Yeah.
But but then obviously there is the price element and everything else. But that's another thing as well. There are certain things, like I'll say this on here. Hopefully, no airline will judge me for it. So I've realised by packing down my gizmo into a bag, it's kind of like the golf bag policy. When you travel with a golf bag, no one cares how much it weighs. Same goes for the gizmo bag. No one
Oh,
cares.
I like this.
I've
This is,
literally I've travelled with like two coats in there, jumpers. Like flipping, like Gina's like, oh, I really want to buy this thing. And I'm like, no, just stick it there. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But then, like as well, like if anyone stops me, I'm like, it's padding. Like it is literal padding. Like most of the stuff,
yeah.
I'm not gonna stick. I'm not gonna stick a glass vase in there, am I? It's just like,
Exactly. No, I like this. We should have like alternative travel hacks for
yeah,
disabled people.
there you
That could be
go.
number one.
And then the other ones, like 90% of the time, most airlines, like I never pre-book my seats because I always get put at the front anyway. Because they're like,
Yeah.
oh, you're the guy in the wheelchair, so you gotta go to the front. And I'm like, okay, fine,
Yeah.
that's no problem. So that's one of my other ones. And the other one's the passport control scuttle, I call it. So
Okay.
like I get off the plane last, but all the suckers are stood at the back of the queue waiting for passport control. The guy in the yellow jumper or whatever colour it is for that country goes, no, come with me, you'll go straight to the front, it's fine.
Yes.
And the added bonus is, as much as you've waited on the plane, by the time you get to the baggage collection, your stuff's already ready to go because you've been stuck on the plane. So it's all about perspective. So if
Yeah,
you look at it that
exactly. It
way,
probably
like,
takes the same amount of time.
yeah, so you sit there and go, right, I've got my stuff, I'm off. See you later. Or another little tip is as well, if you're doing package holidays, a lot of the time, if you can give them evidence of a disability, now that's a whole other question of like, why do I have to prove that I have a disability? But if you can do that,
Mhm.
oftentimes if you're doing a package holiday, you don't have to do the group trip to all the different hotels. They'll give you a direct transfer because they'll put you in a car that will just take you to where you need to go.
Ooh,
So there you go.
this is good to
Happy
know.
days.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's certain little tricks. There's certain little tricks that do work, and like the only one I'm skeptical of is if we ever get to the point where me and Gina get married or something, like honeymoon suites and stuff like that. I feel like are out of the question when it comes to wheelchair users because it's like
Yeah.
no one goes. Oh, do you know what I need in a honeymoon suite? A nice wet room. Like it's always like, or a nice big bath with rose petals and everything else.
I know, because obviously, like, disabled people don't get married. Duh.
No, nope. We don't
No, we
have
don't.
relationships. We don't go out for dinner. We don't have oh, she must be your carer. She can't be your partner.
Yes, yeah, I've had that. Yeah. Carer,
Or
sister, all that kind of stuff. I was like,
yeah,
yeah.
sister's my favourite because of the public displays of affection because it just confuses people.
Yes.
They just look at it and go, "Oh my god!" So I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." I'm always really tempted to finish it off with, "You're right, sis."
amazing. Oh, I love that.
But yeah, so travel and disability. So I think as well, it gets a bad rep. Like I think that's the other thing as well. Like I think most of it comes down to travel and disability is possible, just annoying. Like
Yes.
that would be if I had to condense it down. Like 9 times out of 10, you can find an accessible hotel within reason, and also like if you know how it all works. Like I think one of my things why I'm so confident with air travel is because I've done it quite a few times. I know everything that's expected, so I can almost answer the check-in staff, the airplane staff's questions before they've even asked it. So I'm like, look, I literally was on the phone to the company that I'm flying to Germany with. Was like, right, here's all my. I literally have a Google Doc that says Charlie's flight stuff, which has like the measurements for all of my equipment, the weights of all of my equipment, the power outputs, everything, just ready to go. And if it worst comes to worst, like I've even got a picture of me with my front attachment. So if I get to the front desk and they go, "What's in it?" I can show them a picture of me with it and go, "It's that," and they go, "Oh, okay."
Oh, brilliant. It's just organisation, isn't it? And I think that's another thing. It's like
Yeah.
you were saying you'd like recently booked something kind of last minute-ish and trying to be more spontaneous. I think that is one of the really hard things about travelling, even like domestically travelling with a disability, because
Yeah.
spontaneity is just like nearly impossible. You want to book an accessible room, you're looking, they're all going to be taken up, especially if you're looking for something last minute-ish in the summer-ish,
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of planning. If you need to hire equipment wherever you stay in and all this kind of stuff, so it does take a bit of that kind of spontaneity out of it. But I find, like you with your Google Doc, the more planned you are, the more spontaneous it starts to feel. I know that doesn't make sense.
No, I completely get that. I think as well, like once you've got your basic, like what you need down to, like, I know I need these bits of equipment. I know that I've got a shower that I can use when I get there. I know that most of the, like a lot of the other bit that I always do research on is like train stations and like public transport, how accessible that is. So once I know all that information, I'm kind of like, we'll figure it out. Like once you can get from point A to point B, and you've got a base camp. Once base camp's okay, you've always got a safety zone where you're like, okay, I know I'm okay here, and then obviously everything else you can sort of solve from then on out. But then also, like we say, it does bring in some of the more like fun bits. Like I've been on trips before where Gina's rented an electric scooter and I've just followed her with my attachment and I'm bombing along in the cycle lanes with my attachment. And the funniest thing about it is you never really get to use those things to full capacity. So it was great fun to actually get to let it loose.
Yeah, no, I keep thinking that we'll get Kirsty to get an electric bike or something while we're out somewhere.
Definitely, it's definitely worth doing. One of my favourite places to do it, we did it in Barcelona, and there they've got such an e-bike, e-scooter culture that like everyone uses it. And the system works really well because like all of the bike lanes and stuff. I mean, it's very similar here in London, although people are a little bit more sketchy. Whereas in Barcelona, like the traffic light system for the bike lanes is very like on point. They are very organised what they're doing. Everyone's very like chill. Yeah, so that was one of my things. But it's definitely good fun because it also makes you feel included. That was one of the things I came away from that trip with. Was I was like, I know this seems so ridiculous because we are literally just getting from point A to point B, but it was part of the fun of just scooting along. But yeah, there we go. But what made you with the travel? Like, what some of your favourite things that you've come across from doing the travel blog?
Oh, now that's a question, isn't it? I mean, we've stayed at some really cool accommodation that, like, we've not found I shouldn't say this, but we've not found the perfect accommodation yet. And I think that's because it seems to be a balance between, no offence to any of the places that we've stayed, but it seems to be a balance. You either get somewhere that's like super stylish, because I like things that are a bit quirky, a little bit weird, something like that. but it's not quite as accessible, or you get somewhere super accessible that looks really clinical. So that's
I completely agree.
So I think like accommodation wise, yet to find the perfect accommodation. But what cool things have we come across? Well, just the other week there, I was away. It's with an organisation that it's specifically for disabled people with disabilities, or health conditions, and we went canoeing and we camped.
You said, I remember you when I texted you that.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
So, it was so cool. It was like, I was really nervous about it because I was a bit, I don't know, I know like I'm all like, yeah, just wing it. But occasionally things like knock my confidence or I feel a bit uncertain about stuff. And this was one of them because I was a bit like, I have no idea what to expect here. Like I've got arm weakness at the minute. Like, am I going to be able to canoe? You know, all this kind of stuff. Which the answer is no. I can't canoe very well. But Kirsty was picking up the slack at the back, and then eventually the organizer woman came and strapped her canoe to ours. So Kirsty and her were rowing it like a boat, and I was just like, just enjoying the scenery.
Yeah.
But so we did that, and it was like, I just love that kind of being outdoors stuff. And it was just pouring with rain, but it didn't matter because we were all in waterproofs. And then we just camped on this little island, and it was
that's amazing. That's really cool.
It was so cool to do it, and I loved like their approach to it was just like, we'll work on the basis that if you need assistance with anything, you'll ask. Otherwise, we're not going to fuss you. You know, we're not going to kind of coddle you. You know, it's So that was a really, really good adventure, and I came away from that feeling like. I actually came away from that feeling more confident and thinking like, yeah, I could do this. Then I'm away on like Facebook Marketplace looking up tents and stuff like I'm going to go next week.
I thought you were going to say I went out and bought a canoe. I was like,
wish.
That's a way to do it.
I wish. Maybe a kayak or like, one of the like stand-up paddle boards. Obviously, I won't be doing any standing up on it. Sit-down paddle boards.
Just lay there. Just
get Kirsty to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Like that's what they're there for. Exactly. And you keep saying that you're my PA. Well, PA, like
I always say to her, that's what you get your carers allowance for.
Yeah, there you go. Otherwise, Gina doesn't get it, so she's like, well, you ain't paying me.
No, it's a bit of an ongoing joke with us. It's like, well, you're rolling in it with all that carers allowance. You need to work.
I call Gina. I probably shouldn't say this, but I call Gina my PB.
Do I want to know?
I'll just leave that to what people mean.
Oh no, right? Because that's gone completely over my head.
PB. What can it be?
I don't know.
Personal bitch. That's just, but that's mine and Gina's sense of humour. Yeah, she'll respond to that with. She'll just respond to that with, yeah, well, I'm only in it for the parking, so I don't know what you're moaning about. And I'm like, yeah, fair enough.
No, I like that. I like that kind of humour.
We were saying on a podcast the other day, I feel like when you've got a disability, your humour automatically becomes slightly dark.
Oh, yeah.
It becomes slightly dark. Yeah. And you don't realise it till you see someone that's outside of like your immediate circle, because you're like, you'll make a joke and they look at you in sheer shock and you're like, why are you not laughing? That was funny. And they're like, I didn't know whether I could. And you're like, oh, yeah, you can. That's why I made the joke.
Yeah, we're not trying to trip you up for it. Because Kirsty will always say stuff like, oh, I'm just going to wheel her to the top of that hill and let go of her. And everyone's like, she's not actually going to do it.
One of my favourites was, I didn't even realise, at my old work, I was sat in the office, sat next to one of the guys, and I'd only been there, I think, a couple of months. Anyway, so she's gone to me, I'm just going to go out for a walk, and like, just because of where my brain goes, I wouldn't know what that's like. Let me know what it's like. And she just stops, and you're like, and the worst thing is, I didn't, because I'd say that sort of stuff to my friends or Gina or whatever, and they'd just start laughing. But like, and then I registered what I said, and I was like, "Oh, no, you can laugh. It's fine. Like I was just joking. It's absolutely fine."
No, you do. You get a total dark sense of humour. And I do think, I mean, for me anyway, that's been like a total coping mechanism throughout the years and like a way to talk about the difficult stuff, but put a funny slant on it. And then it just kind of sticks and becomes part of your repertoire, doesn't it? I think.
Or the other ones, well, I can't run away, so.
Yeah.
I always joke and say, I said to Gina, I was like, well, the thing is, like, I didn't really have a choice. You just kind of, that was it. You grabbed hold of the wheelchair, and that was it. I couldn't go anywhere. So, like, here I am.
It's like me trapping Kirsty by getting ill 8 months in.
Yeah, there you go. And she's like, well, now I pay you, so you can't go anywhere because I pay you to be here. Also, just a disclaimer, that doesn't encourage anyone to just grab anyone's wheelchair and start pushing them before someone comments, "Oh, but you're encouraging that." No, don't do that. Don't.
We're not.
If you don't, without asking, don't ever push anyone's wheelchair.
Exactly.
I always hate that I have to put those disclaimers in because I'm like, there's always going to be someone that's like, "Oh," and I'm like, "It was a joke, guys. Relax."
I know. And it's different. I think, joke, you don't want to upset or offend anyone, but at the same time, it's like, I think sometimes people are just looking for a bit of an argument, aren't they? And,
Yeah. It's really hard. And I think it comes into what we were speaking about earlier, like the negativity sells when it comes to air travel and what's going on with the right to flights thing. Great movement, completely stand behind it. But then, as you say, it's the whole thing of a lot of the press coverage is never, this thing went really well, or Charlie travelled with this airline and had a great experience. If I went to the Sun and was like, what about writing a piece on me having a great experience with a certain airline, they'd be like, nah. Whereas if I'm like, I nearly died, they're like, wow, yeah, let's do a story on that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. But it's not sensational.
It's a hard one, I think. No, it's got to be like, it's almost got to fit that disability narrative, and that's one of my worries. It's like I completely understand the amount of campaigning that's going on in multiple different sections of disability, but I do worry sometimes that people are just going to start viewing us as negative ninnies.
Yeah, I think so. Because I mean, I know that like, if I post something like on my Facebook, or my Instagram, and it's like, oh, I had this accessibility nightmare or whatever, it gets so much more engagement, like so much more. So many people liking it, commenting on it, sharing it, right? And, when you're trying to like build your profile on Instagram or whatever, you can think like, oh God, well, that's what's getting me most engagement. That's what I'll continue to do. But like, it's never sat right with me. It doesn't feel right with me at all. So I steer away from it. And here I'm sat with just, not too many followers, but
word of advice, the perfect little section you can use. People love disability in relationships. Like everyone loves it. That's some of my best performing content is when it's just a photo of me and Gina, or like anything like that does really well. I mean there is also, I've covered intimacy and that does but that's a whole different game. But just in general, posting about relationships and advice about relationships does really well. And I think as well, from a narrative of being a same-sex relationship, that would do, not to give you social media advice on the podcast, but here we are, that would do really well. In my opinion, that is just from like what I've experienced with me and Gina. You'll probably do one and be like, Charlie, it didn't do very well. And I'm like, I tried.
Like, this tanked. It's your fault.
Yeah, it's your fault. But no, so like I think it's a hard one when it comes to social media. I mean, I spoke about it, I think, on another podcast, to say like it's so hard to understand where to come at it from, because you don't want to fall into the trap of, oh, I do really well because I moan all the time, or I see the negative all the time. But then oftentimes that is what sells. I kind of know for a fact that if I turned around and I ever started leaning into the inspiration porn side of things, so if I started running around the room and saying, I couldn't do this a week ago, it would probably do really well. Whereas, or if I started going, oh, someone pushed me out of my wheelchair, it'd probably do really well. Although the fact of someone's pushed me out of the wheelchair, I'm probably having a really shit day.
Yeah.
But at least I got a load of likes for it. But then if I post like, oh, me and Gina had this wonderful dinner at this restaurant and the guy was really accommodating for my disability, everyone's like, as they should be. And you're like, that wasn't the point. Like,
Yeah. Yeah, I know. No,
it's
tough.
hard. It's so hard. And I think social media, but then also I think travel is a very different thing as well, because once you get to a certain point, I feel like it will snowball. So keep going, because whenever you talk to anyone with disability, one of the first things we ask about is, so what do you like, how do you travel? That's the first thing I always get. It's like people expect me to be like in my bed and that's it. I don't go out. Like I love when I go to bars and restaurants, like particularly bars. Someone's just like, oh wow, you're out with your friend, you're having a drink, and I'm like, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go. It's strange places, social media, but it's the space we're in. And I think you're onto a winner. Whenever I look at some of the travel places, I'm like, as soon as you can get businesses on board with how important accessibility is,
Yeah.
I think you'll do really well. It's just getting in that initial conversation of, do you know how much money you can make if you do these things?
Yes, yeah. I've had some pretty good experiences, some pretty good businesses and stuff. So yeah.
Awesome. What actually we can't name any names, but what's one of your favourites in terms of like describe the like what happened to me? Because I know you can't be like, this company's great, this one's terrible.
No. Okay, so we went to go stay at this place that kind of, I think they knew they needed to make some improvements accessibility wise. It was the lodge that we went to go stay at, but they said, we're fully wheelchair accessible, and we arrived and there was a bit of a problem. The door thresholds were like this, and it's like, that's not really wheelchair accessible. And while we were still staying there, I spoke to her about it, the person who runs the place, and spoke to her about it, and she was really like apologetic, like, I'm so sorry, didn't realise that was an issue, please keep in touch with me. And when I got home, I was like, I emailed her, this is an organisation, company you can buy ramps from. They'll tell you what you need for your doorways. And there was another, she's got a hot tub, and I mentioned about hot tub hoists, and she's like, oh, definitely want to look into hot tub hoists, so she's dead keen on it. And then a few weeks later, I got a message with some photographs saying, these are the ramps I've put in, are these okay? And all this kind of stuff. And it's just like,
that's amazing.
It's like, I love you so much.
Yeah. It just takes that, just listening. That's I think any advice I'd give to, well, as we spoke about earlier, when it comes to support, just listen, be open. Same goes with organisations and wanting to be more inclusive. And I think the other thing I would say to organisations is get this whole thing out of your head of like making something accessible is expensive, because there are cost-effective ways of doing it, and also most disabled people appreciate an attempt. So, like, if we can see that you've tried to accommodate for as much as you can, we'll respect that a lot more rather than you going, oh, we thought about it, but then when we wanted to do it, we wanted to do everything, and then it cost too much, so we didn't do any of it.
Yeah. Plus, also build it, and we'll come. Make it accessible. Yes. We'll be there, because you're missing out on money if you're not accessible.
Mm-hmm. Also, the other thing I always point out, and it's a really morbid thing to say, is 90% of your guests have a 95% chance more likely to end up like us than we are of them. Yes. So like, it's very unlikely with the majority of conditions that we're going to have a eureka moment and we're going to be absolutely fine and our disability won't affect us anymore. However, you're going to be 100% more likely to find more individuals where, like, as they've got older, they've found things progressively more difficult, or something's happened and something's changed, the situation's changed. So that is the other piece of advice I'd give. But just conscious of people's time, of your time, I'm going to hit you with the last question because we've been going for a little while, but we're definitely going to do an episode 2 because I feel like we could go on for hours.
Yes, I'm loving this.
Is what's one piece of politically correctness that you really strongly agree with or disagree with?
Okay, this is like, it kind of, it's not necessarily political correctness, but it's definitely related to the online disabled community, as we've already been discussing.
Yeah.
And it's to do with the negativity. So I personally don't think the first thing we should do after a bad experience with a business or an organization is go to social media and slag them off. I don't think we should do that.
Yeah.
Right? And it's because, again, it gets the likes, it gets the shares, it gets the comments, it gets the engagement. Everybody loves a horror story about a ramp that was shit. You know, everyone loves that, right?
Yeah.
Everyone loves to be outraged, right? I'm outraged. I'm outraged that, like, it's hard for me to go to a certain shop because they can't be able to put a ramp there, right? But as I explained with the place that we stayed at before, you know, I spoke to them. They made changes. I said, I'm not going to put anything up on social media, give you an opportunity to change this. And then once you've changed it, I can tell everyone how awesome you are. And that's the way I'd rather do it, because for two reasons. Like, one, I just don't want to get into that negative, like, hate spiral on social media.
Yeah.
But also, I don't want to put out negative information that could potentially put people off travel and off going to explore places because they think, well, I'm going to turn up at an accommodation and it's going to be a nightmare. Do you know what? Yeah, you might.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just
that's a big thing. I think me and you are on a very similar page. One thing I would say is more with the bigger organisations. I think the only strength, not the only, but one of the strengths of posting stuff like that on social media is it gets through the email bullshit, as I would like to call it.
Yeah.
Of like, someone's always going to block it because someone's going to be like, this the second person. Like, it's one person. What difference is it going to make? So that's the only time when I'm like, do you know what? When it's a big hitter, when it's like one of the big companies that, do you know what? You are just going to ignore my email because most of you don't give a toss. That's the only time I would say, do you know what? That's when I say go to social media, because unfortunately, by doing that, it makes them do something. Yes, we've seen before organisations somehow find a way to wiggle out of it, but that is the only time I would,
I can see where you're coming from with that, like with the big organisations, because like, obviously, as you say, you've got all the email bullshit with the big organisations as well. And also, the big organisations have the money to do this in the first place. They have the advisors telling them what to do in the first place, the architects. They've got an entire... This should not have been missed with like a huge city centre hotel that's got, you know, that's part of an absolutely massive chain. It shouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
But, you know, like, Susie who owns the local kind of post office or whatever, don't go ripping it to shreds.
No, that's when I'm like that. That's a different story. I think when it comes to the big ones, one of the other things as well, as we've seen before, with when people who have disabilities have gone in to try and consult and say, look, I'm happy to come in and help you guys fix this. The common thought of, we're going to do that for free. Get that shit out of your head. Like, if you ask any other consultant, if you employed, I don't know, a hygiene, I said that really weird, a hygiene consultant or anything like that, you'd automatically pay them. So think the same when you employ a DEI or inclusive consultant. But then the other thing I would say is, like you said earlier, I completely agree with the fact of like, you also don't want to make yourself known as the one that constantly gaslights people online. Because yes, you get the views, yes, you get a lot of interactions because people want to see that. But then from a business perspective, if you want to work with these brands to improve it, no one's going to want to work with you if they're just thinking, all you're going to do is set a light to us as soon as we get anything wrong.
Exactly, yeah.
As I said earlier, for me, my perspective is always look at the bits they are doing well. So go in and be like, you know what, you've done really well with this. Like, you've done really well with this, but these things could be better. Like, it's so hard. It's so hard because as well, you can get so frustrated with it. Like I said earlier, I did when we were in Turkey. I had to walk away but that is a skill I've learned of like I just need to call off. Didn't write any emails. Didn't like I've moaned to Gina and might have said a few expletives, but I didn't do anything like publicly to say something about it. And I spoke about it afterwards after I'd called off and sort of had time to process what had happened. And actually, when I thought about it, the accessible room was more inaccessible than the inaccessible room. So I was like,
This is true.
silver linings. But yeah, I think that's the thing is gaslighting's a big thing at the moment, and I think for organisations, they're just that's I've always said on here, and I'm always the one that's banging on about it. I worry with the content that a lot of creators put out and the way that a lot of people react to certain situations as disabled people has a negative impact on how we're viewed by the rest of the community and the rest of society because we look like we're always looking for a problem. And no one wants to be that guy that's always looking like if you're the guy that every time you go out drinking with him, he's looking for a fight, you don't want to go out with him. No. Because it just ruins your night. Same premise of like if you're the guy that's like, oh my god, this woman's just not gonna stop moaning at me, or this guy's not gonna stop moaning at me, I don't want to be anywhere near them.
Yeah.
Like
I know. The thing is as well, like another caveat to what I said as well is like I understand sometimes as well when you've had like a bad experience, it can be really distressing, you know, depending on what the experience was. And particularly if you're on your own, it can be really upsetting. And sometimes people reach out on social media to get support from their community. Yeah. And I do also completely understand that as well. So, you know, it's not something that made me go like, oh God, unfollow that person. Do you know, if I see them, if anything, I'm actually more likely to message them and go, God, you okay? Like, do you know?
Yeah. But I think that's also the way you frame it. Like I'm very open to people going, oh my God, like for example, they might see someone like myself or you that's traveled quite a bit and go, oh my God, have you had this happen before? What the hell did you do? Who did you speak to? What can I do? That's a very different kettle of fish because you're not like you can literally put on your story, I've had a really negative experience with this situation. You haven't named any names. I mean, the problem might have been that you might have mentioned them in a previous story. Then that's a different thing. But you can always just reach out to the community and even just IM people. Like I've had people message me and gone, I've had trouble with this. Like I had someone message me about my attachment. So someone messaged me and said, oh, I'm traveling in Europe at the moment. I had a problem with the charger. What do I do? And I managed to help them fix it. And that's amazing. What we need to get to of like speak to the community. Like, yeah, vent to us because we get it, but you don't need to gaslight the company.
Yeah. Do you know, I know I keep going on, I'm sorry, but there is the thing as well of like that whole kind of being the good disabled person and not causing a ruckus and blah, blah, blah. And I don't want to pander to that too much either because you're right, you know, people will be like, oh God, disabled people are always so angry about stuff. And it's like, because there's a lot to be angry about. But yeah, I think when you're, particularly if you have like a brand or, you know, like you're building a social media kind of profile for yourself or whatever, I think you do have to be responsible with what you're sharing and how you're sharing it. I think.
Yeah, completely agree. And like the thing is as well, you have to so that people get things wrong. And I don't get this mentality of people like, oh, everyone's perfect and we should get everything perfect at the right time. It's like when I look at particularly we've spoken a lot about the air travel industry, there are a lot of things that they're doing really well that are a lot better than when I first started traveling by air. Mm-hmm. And no one talks about it because everyone's like, oh, they're terrible, they do this. Like no one speaks on those topics and accept that like people want everything to be absolutely perfect now. That's never going to happen. How many like I wanted to be a millionaire by the time I was 28. Is that still possible? Yes, but it's a long way off. But we have to just accept where we're at. This is the thing that I can't seem to get people to accept. It's like, yes, we have to book support on trains. Yes, we have to book support on flights. Yes, getting on buses can be a pain in the arse. But if we take things back to the 1950s, 60s, whatever, if I was me back then, I couldn't do any of that. So, which one would you rather?
Yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely.
So, but yes, tangent over. I always give my guests a chance to plug themselves. So let everyone know what they're working on, who they're working with, what they want people to know about, and it's sort of your opportunity to shout and scream about everything that you're doing.
Cool. So just a reminder, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Wheelie Braw. So that's WHEELYBRAW. Why is it so hard to spell that? And and also accessibleholidays.scot as well. That's a growing directory of accessible accommodation, days out, food and drink, and shopping. So yeah, have a follow and just come to Scotland. Scotland's awesome. Come to Scotland.
To be fair, I gave Edinburgh a hard time at the beginning, but I did have a lot of fun. Just wish I planned it better. So I completely agree. Scotland is a lot of fun. Do want to go back. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a great episode. And let's say we could sit here for hours. And I think travel is such a hot topic. So we will do an episode 2 as well. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Not Quite Podcast. Please make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram to get regular updates about the podcast.
These my dollars make it hurt.